Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar titled Building a More Sustainable Future Together. I'm Kathy Jackson, Vice President and Executive Chair, Sustainability at BCD Travel. With me today, we have Jerry Tenebruso, Global Account Manager, Sustainability for Delta Airlines, and Elodie Winter, Key Account Director for IHG. Both Jerry and Elodie are sustainability experts for their respective companies, and I'm very happy they were able to join us. Before we get started, we've allowed time at the end of the session for Q&A, so I'd like to encourage you to use the chat functionality within Teams to raise any questions you have for the two panelists. With the recent release of IPCC's climate report, our discussion is very timely. Over the last few months, we've seen an unprecedented number of natural disasters occurring all over the world, from devastating floods, tropical storms, hurricanes, droughts, earthquakes, mudslides, heat waves, wildfires, and sadly, the list goes on. Many of these are a direct result of climate change and global warming. This is a challenge that affects each and every one of us, and for certain, our children, our grandchildren, and generations yet to come. The United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals, referred to as the SDGs, were set up in 2015 and were designed to be an urgent call of action to act as a blueprint to achieve a better and more sustainable future for all. More and more companies are stepping up and adopting the SDGs and developing a strategic plan to address each of these issues, with one of these being climate action, SDG number 13. And both of your companies have been making news and progress around sustainability. So I'm going to ask you to share the importance your organization is placing on it. And so, Jerry, I'll start with you. Delta announced earlier this year its plan toward carbon neutrality by 2030. Can you give us more details into this plan?
Sure. Hi, Kathy.
Hi, Jerry.
Yeah. And, nice having everybody on the line. Thanks for joining today. This is really such an important topic, and it's so great to be invited to something like this. And the more conversations we have in this space, the better. And honestly, one conversation at a time to raise awareness for all companies. And Delta doesn't see sustainability as competitive. It's really collaborative, and it's all about coalition building here, regardless of the solution. If it's offsets, if it's SAF, or what the sheets are made of at a hotel, or everything along those lines. It's really about the whole travel ribbon. And specifically with Delta, the goal is we have the date. We have 2030, and what does that mean? Being that specific date in mind. And when it comes to what we put in the planes, it's around SAF. And if you're not familiar with SAF, what it stands for is Sustainable Aviation Fuel. And that ties into our call to action, which is the flight to net zero, to be a net zero aviation, impact aviation company. And that's from what we put in the planes, to waste, to noise, to running the full gambit on not having an impact to our environment, to the people we fly over. And one of the ways we can do that is through SAF. And we have a very specific goal for SAF, which ties to that 2030 timeline, and that is to be a diversified supply chain for our airline to be 10% SAF by 2030. And that is a very, very tall order, to have 10% of our fuel being purchased through SAF. And just for the folks on the line, what does that mean? What does that scale mean? In 2019. A normalized year, we burned about 4.6 billion gallons of conventional jet fuel. So if we stood still, that would mean about 500 million gallons of SAF needed at that 10% goal. And obviously, based on global projections on what the aviation industry is going to, based on IATA's growth patterns, around 2 or 3 per. Between 2 and 4%, depending on where you are in growth over the next 10 years. And that number is not going to stay still. And so how do we do that? How do we become in a hard to abate industry such as aviation, where we need to burn something in order to move people and goods? How do we do that? And it's really coalition building and signaling to the market that this solution, while it's a midterm solution and it's not perfect, is what we can do right now, to be honest. We shouldn't have to wait for some kind of silver bullet from a sustainability standpoint to get started. We have to slow the progress, the march of carbon in the future. And I always use a bathtub analogy. The water's still filling up in that bathtub, and we're trying to not let it spill over. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to remove that stopper a little bit. And that's what SAF is for us right now. And just some thoughts around SAF and why we love it so much and why it's this near-term solution right now is based on current feasibility studies by aircraft manufacturers. SAF can be blended with conventional jet fuel up to a rate of about 50%. Now, based on those numbers, based on the current production, Kathy, there's about 0.05 SAF versus conventional jet fuel produced. In 2019, 96 billion gallons of conventional jet fuel were burned, and less than 100 million gallons were produced of SAF. So it is a very nascent time right now to from a SAF standpoint. We're hopefully getting our first deliveries very soon as well for our customers, and going forward having more and more to be able to offer our customers. But it's a very early time. But why we love it so much, SAF is not causing one problem by solving another. And what I mean by that, it doesn't require any infrastructure gains, in that it doesn't require any net new planes to be purchased that have to accept specific SAF. Also, from a pipeline standpoint, it can be pumped through current pipelines that are out there that are used by conventional jet fuel. And so it can be blended and mixed right now. And so that's why we really like it right now as a near-term solution. And that's what's going to help us get to that 2030 goal on SAF. But it doesn't end there. There's so much more from an aviation standpoint that's beyond SAF. Is what are we doing as a company? Things around single serve plastics and getting rid of those the next time you head into a Sky Club. Also, those machines and vehicles that push your plane away from the gate and also carry your luggage. We want those vehicles to be electrified by 25% by 2022, and the list goes on and on. But I definitely want to hear from Elodie as well. And you're on mute, Kathy. Sorry.
Thank you, Jerry. Why is SAF limited, and how do we increase the supply?
Yeah. Well, it's a fragmented market from a supply chain standpoint. Our SAF that we're currently getting right now and sourcing is based on used cooking oils and other lipids, other waste lipids, and that is a fragmented thing to collect from different sources. There's no centralized location where you can just collect used feedstock. And so that's a problem in itself. And one, where do we source this from a supply chain standpoint? And I think over time that'll just get more and more streamlined as suppliers also backward integrate into the supply chain and make it more efficient, which then also impacts the cost. The other is cost itself, is that this needs to be a feasible, financially astute decision and solution for customers to be able to invest in. So the cost of SAF is very many multiples more expensive than a traditional offset right now if you were to do something in forestry. So by amplifying the message that this is a drop-in solution, by having more interest from corporate customers that this is a viable solution right now to help them address their emission goals, it signals to oil and gas companies that this is something that is potentially profitable. And also the amount of suppliers out there, 2 major suppliers making to scale at the current time, need to signal to the oil and gas industry that more players need to get involved. And by showing that there is interest, so there is a demand curve for it, hopefully there will be more supply. And that naturally brings down the price, hopefully.
Exactly. Supply and demand. Thank you, Jerry. Okay, now to you, Elodie. IHG released earlier this year The Journey to Tomorrow, and your commitment to make a positive difference for your people, communities, and planet over the next decade. Can you share more about the commitments in this plan?
Yes, absolutely. And good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Hi from Paris. I'm actually lucky to be in Paris this week, in the City of Light. So look, I'm very happy to be here, as I have as you've mentioned. So I am a key account director at IHG. I am also stepping in for my colleagues in the corporate responsibility team. So you probably will hear less technical jargon from me compared to my colleague Jerry on the call. But any question that I cannot answer, of course, I will pass it on to them. I am working closely with the CR team as part of my role. I think before I go into the journey to tomorrow, I just wanted to answer also your earlier question, which is how the importance of sustainability and responsible business for our organization. Corporate responsibility is really central to the way we do business at IHD, and it's a key part of our responsible business practice. If you think about our purpose as an organization, this is to deliver true hospitality for good. So, all over the world, every day, we've got millions of guests that walk through our doors, all over the countries we operate in. Our purpose is simple. We want to make sure those guests are looked after, are cared for, but we also want to make sure we do it whilst respecting and supporting the local communities we are implanted in, and supporting them, especially when they need us the most. So actually the pandemic that we are sort of still in at the moment, but the past 16 months have really shown that true purpose of what true hospitality really is. And when you think about many of our hotels, the crucial role they have played, when it is accommodating health workers and medical staff and doctors, homeless, and the list goes on. So this is really that purpose of true hospitality really came to life. But also supporting food banks and charities. We had a call with the general manager of one of our hotels in Vienna, the Intercontinental Vienna. I'm not sure how familiar you are with Austria, but it was actually a really nice, heartwarming story. So if I can, I will just share it very quickly. So of course, the pandemic hit last year, and no one was staying in hotels anymore, right? But they still had the staff, they still had the chef and the kitchen staff and all the food groceries, coming in, all the orders that they couldn't cancel. So they started making meals. In order to distribute and to give them away to homeless, refugees, and people in need. And a local newspaper heard about it and did an interview with them. They were interested. So they explained, look, we are doing all of that, but we have a problem. We can't transport the meal. We can only, we can cook, but we are not able to distribute it. And as if you know Vienna, you know that to go around the city, you have carriages, which are, pulled by horses. And that company doing that actually reached out to the hotel to partner with them to say, okay, you can cook the meals, we can deliver them. So it was just a lovely partnership between those two together, and they've been able not to waste, right? Not to waste all the food that was being produced. So it's just a little side note, but I think
working together.
Yeah, working exactly, collaboration, like you referred to at the beginning. And of course, earlier this year, we released our Journey to Tomorrow, which is essentially our 10-year responsible business plan. So this is going to take us until 2030. And the role, actually, if I think about this plan, this is really split into 5 main areas. So the first one is actually the one I'm really passionate about, is covered by our HR team, and it's around championing a diverse culture where everyone can thrive. So this is really about gender balance and making sure we are doubling the number of underrepresented minority, but also around conscious inclusion, around prioritizing well-being and the well-being of others. And I think, pretty much those topics. So as I said, this is an HR topic. And then if you can picture sort of 4 buckets, we have then the topics that are covered by corporate responsibility. So the first one is around improving the lives of 30 million people in the local communities. So like you referred to at the beginning of the call, when there is natural disasters which strike, how do we support those communities? But also a very important topic nowadays, how do we attract and retain talent in the hospitality industry, right? Because we need to provide skills and training and education and get all those people back to work in that wonderful industry on the back of the pandemic. And of course, supporting food banks and in order to reduce and diminish poverty. And then you have the three other topics, which are reduce energy and carbon use, also the waste, how to pioneer minimal waste in the hospitality industry, and how to conserve and protect water. So a busy plan.
These are all very important factors, and I wish we had time, Elodie, to dive into each and every one. But for today's discussion, I'd like to ask that you share a little bit more about the plan around to make responsible environmental choices in the areas around carbon and energy, waste, and water.
Yeah, okay. And especially, I mean, carbon and energy, of course, is really important at the moment. And I know we have a lot of questions from our corporate clients on that. So in terms of our carbon goals, we want to reduce those in emission, the emissions in line with climate science. So you may know that IHG has got approved science-based targets. So following the Paris Climate Agreement, and in order, of course, to reduce global warming by 1.5 degrees. So we are following those targets. What is important for me to mention is we have targets for our whole estate. So not only our direct operations, but also our franchise model. And this is really important because I think different companies are going to report on carbon reduction, not necessarily covering the whole estate, but we have plans for all of those. We also want to reduce to net zero carbon all our new builds by 2030. So that's going to be a very ambitious plan, and also see how we can maximize and optimize the use of renewable energy. So this is on the topic of carbon and energy. Now, when it comes to waste, of course, also really big areas of opportunity for us. We want to reduce food waste through prevent, donate, and divert plan. We've got hotels that are doing great stuff on the topic. If you think about it, some hotels are investing in artificial intelligence tools in order to really understand their consumption of and their waste, but then also the tools are able to make recommendation of the different purchasing agreement they should have, or etc., in order to minimize the waste. I'm sure you've also heard about the plans to move all our estates, so 6,000 hotels, to bulk size amenities. When you think about all those miniatures, product in the bathroom, I mean, how much plastic this is consuming, and despite the pandemic, we are still going to go ahead with that. Of course, it's a lot easier in a new build properties. As I said, I'm standing today. I'm at the Kimpton in Paris, a beautiful property, by the way, if you have the opportunity. So this is not my bedroom, just in case anyone I wish it was, but it's not. It's the Kimpton in Paris, and because this is a brand new property that actually just opened 2 days ago, they already have full-size amenities in the bathroom. They don't use plastic bottle, they have glass bottle, recycling, etc. So this is a lot easier for this type of properties. But also really throughout the guest stay, really look at opportunities to reduce and eliminate plastic, or at least move to recyclable options, and also collaboration for what we call about the circular economy for all the commodity items. This is also another area. And the last one is water. Sorry, I just realized I am babbling away. I probably need to wrap it up. We are also looking on, in terms of water, how we can implement tools to help our hotel to reduce their water consumption and work on water stewardship projects. So we have a few in Delhi that we worked on, London as well, partnership with River Trust, but how we can support and ensure also there is sanitation available for everyone. So
excellent. Well, thank you, Elodie. And one thing, I know that IHG recently did a guest study. Can you share some of the findings from that study?
Yes, no, absolutely. We did a study I think. Yes, thank you. That helps me because my memory is not actually so good. So we did a study to 9,000 travelers globally, so across different regions. And it was really interesting because we realized that customers are really more mindful than ever when it comes to traveling responsibly. And in the space of a year, COVID has really accelerated and increased the awareness of responsible travel in general. So you can see over actually 50% of the respondents are saying that the pandemic has made them more socially and environmentally conscious when traveling. What is interesting is that figure is going to vary quite significantly based on the age group. So the younger generation, as you may guess, are actually feeling a lot more committed into that, and the number is actually 58% for the younger generation, but for the over 55 the number drops to 36%. So there is a real opportunity for the millennial and the younger travelers, but we also have 82% that are saying that it's important for them to choose a hotel and a brand that operates responsibly, but there's also a direct connection with the cost and the price they are willing to pay. So as you can see on there, they are saying that 31% of them are happy to, consumers are happy to spend on average 31% more to stay in a hotel that operates responsibly. So not only this is the right thing to do, but this is also definitely what consumers want. So.
Excellent. It's always encouraging to see that the travelers also see their role when it comes to sustainability. So thank you for sharing that.
Right.
So with that, I would like to ask the question, Jerry, moving back to you, what should buyers look for in a sustainable supplier?
Sure. When I think, speaking specifically, well, in broad terms first, I think what I'm seeing as I'm chatting with customers is, do you have very transparent sustainability goals? And these goals, can I understand them very easily? Are they easily communicable? But also, could you answer very specific questions or be able to answer to them in an RFP process as well? We're seeing a lot of companies now, as we're chatting with customers at Delta, sustainability is starting to be really weighted in future RFPs. And so what that signals to me, sustainability is not something that you just should do. It's something you have to do to maintain your business. And so having very transparent sustainability goals that's easily communicable to your customers, because they're getting pressure from their stakeholders, investors, employees even. Think of employees from a retention standpoint or even a recruitment standpoint to be able to recruit employees, that you have to have really transparent sustainability goals that everybody can really understand and read. And in the event of, let's say, a hard to abate industry such as like an airline industry, if you will, right? If you can't have, or on the path to having, if you don't have science-based targets yet, but you're on the path, you're having a glide path at least. If you're not there, that's fine, but at least being on the way, a glide path wise towards SBTI, being on your way is just as good. And also customers that I'm chatting with, do you have a program that would help me with my specific goals as well? And that's something that we think about, obviously, with our SAF program. And we're talking specifically to like scope 3 emissions, if you will. The customers have their own goals. And, we pride ourselves on the Delta side, really trying to be that consultant, advocating for SAF in general as a solution for the aviation industry, but also being able to coach through our specific customers, obviously communicating our very transparent goals of what we're trying to do, but then what we're doing in the SAF space to help them with their emission goals and targets from a business travel standpoint. So it really is kind of a matrix answer a little bit, Kathy, and not only what is the company doing in itself, but what can it offer their customers in order to help them with their goals. So they're confident when they either choose an airline partner that they're flying, it's the right aircraft that they're flying on. That's the most fuel efficient, or it's an airline that we have a SAF deal with, like BCD, that signed on a deal with Delta, right? That they can feel confident that when I fly that aircraft or that airline, that my emissions are lower than if I were to be on another aircraft with another airline, for instance. And just answering a question from the chat there, I believe Loki asked a question there, looking into synthetic fuels. That is also something we should be very transparent about as our near term, midterm, and future term. Synthetic fuels, things like hydrogen, future fuels are something that we're very much looking into from a future term, but also with the understanding that what is the impact on our current planes, and also the timeline of investment when you do buy a plane and the amount of time it takes to renew and refresh your fleet, and the time horizon of 20 to 25 years, it's very quite long. So when you're thinking about future technologies, we have to keep this in mind on the capital investment it takes and how long it would take to actually refresh the aviation industry. And so that doesn't mean that's why we have near-term and mid-term goals and very transparent goals. So as we march forward towards these future term ideas and goals and concepts and different fuels, that we can incorporate those over time.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
And now, Elodie, I'll ask the same question to you. What do you think buyers should look for in terms of a sustainable partner?
So I think I agree with what Jerry mentioned, especially around the transparent narrative and being really open to discuss challenge, because let's be honest, it's not going to be a walk in the park, and I think no one has really got it completely sussed and figured it out. So it's really going to be a collaboration between all of the partners, and this is what we are seeing, what we are doing already by working with our peers, with industry groups to really discuss some of the challenge we all face and how we can partner together to address them, or at least to sort of jump on the same wagon and get them fixed. But it's also, I think, about because you're asking what should buyers look for in a sustainable supplier. So it's really understanding the leadership commitment to sustainability as well, and topics like we discussed earlier, covering energy and carbon, water and waste, but also biodiversity impact. Having a clear governance structure in place and policies, example of really how sustainability is embedded within the organization, and how the impact in terms of decision making and business strategy, but also having clear targets in place. So we of course talked about the science-based target, which we think it is quite important, but backed up by actions and monitoring, reporting, etc. So
exactly. Okay, well, I think we're nearing the close of our, before we open it up to some of the questions that have come through in the chat. But before we do, I'd like to ask each of you what strides towards sustainability personally gets you excited. So, Jerry, I'll start with you.
For me, it's being on the phone with a customer and watching their mentality change for the better towards sustainability. To me, that keeps me going for the next 10 customer calls. Honestly, it's having a no, and then having that one conversation where now it's a maybe. For going from no to a maybe to a yes is all I need to just keep going and keep advocating for these programs. And the more we can do these conversations from a summit standpoint, every conversation with the customer, it's really that non-competitiveness around sustainability. It's this coalition building, is that no one is going to do this on their own, is that this is really a team effort on this and sharing information. And anytime a customer shares an idea with me to pass along to our sustainability team, it really, that's the biggest win for me, is that why don't you take a look at this new idea in offsets, or here's something around carbon engineering that you want to pass along. And this is something that we're doing internally. It's that enterprise model, it's that coalition building that really gets me excited, and in really creating a community where we can lean on each other.
Great, thank you. And Elodie?
So for me, I think personally is the fact that as consumers, we are a lot more educated and empowered to make our own decision, right? When it comes to what food we eat and where we buy our clothes, and whether we buy local or from a main supermarket. So I think this is a great realization to think that we can all have an impact and an influence in the future, actually, of the planet, and we can all make conscious and educated choice. So I like that the ball is a little bit in our court as well. But as a mom, I love to see the excitement of the new generation, the next generation. My daughter is 6 years old, and I just love to see how passionate she is about. We sometimes go litter picking. I don't know if in the States you do that, but in Europe, it's a very popular thing nowadays. You see so many families at the weekend going around, and I love to see just the respect and the care they have and how they want to protect the bees and look after the plant. So I think there's a lot of hope for the next generation to do the right thing. Now, of course, the question is, it's all on us, right? In the next 30 years we've got, can we fix whatever is broken, and can we leave enough of a legacy for the next generation? But so, yeah.
Agreed. Oh. Okay, so we had some questions that came through prior to the webinar, so we'll address those first, and then we'll go to those in the chat. So Jerry, the first question is for you. How is sustainability impacting agencies, and what are some potential solutions to support staff?
Sure. I mean, agencies are a very important, they have a very important role in travel, and I think it's going to be increasingly so. Airlines are going to have their SAF solutions, and they're going to advocate for those. But I really feel that agency is going to be the facilitator of these programs, being able to not only advocate for the program and raise awareness of them with the right choices, perhaps, and agents promoting one flight over another because of a sustainable flight, but also at the point of sale, for instance, through OBT and when it's set up, if you will, and promoting SAF suppliers and the right aircraft, if you will, versus another at the very transparent point of sale. And it's really around helping customers make the best choice possible for their trip with the lowest impact. And then the top of mind that keeps coming up over and over again is the facilitation of SAF. How do I make it as easy as possible in the future and as democratic as possible, if you will, to allow any customer the ability to have SAF, even the smallest customer? And that's what the real goal is for Delta is. Every customer should have the ability to reduce their carbon emissions. It shouldn't just be the largest companies in the world that have access to it. And that's where I really feel agency is going to play a huge role in that with their customer base and how to be able to facilitate that in a really efficient model.
Excellent. Well, you actually touched on another question that's here, that what steps are involved in providing transparency to a traveler by enabling an OBT to show emissions data at the booking, air, car, or hotel? So
I think
you mentioned the OBT.
Yeah, there's a lot of work that needs to be done there from a data standpoint initially on, how granular can we get with the data? How can we incorporate the aircraft type, the seat type, everything along those lines as it gets into the OBT model, so it's a very transparent and can actually be accepted as a science-based data set, and that's either primary or secondary. That would be one, but also the evolution of OBT. What does the next version of OBT look like in the future? Elodie mentioned it around certain generations that are coming up, that sustainability is at the core of their selection set. And so they're going to want to, as they get on the road to maybe go to a business meeting, they want to select the greenest choice on that tool. And right now it's not as transparent as it needs to be. And I think out of necessity it needs to be, but also out of just naturally, I think the industry is going to be disrupted a little bit, and we'll see who's first in trying to get that solution set up to offer that ability to do so.
I would agree with you. I think more and more buyers and travel managers are looking for scorecards that provide that transparency, and that the data, it's just not there yet. So, Elodie, what additional roadblocks are you seeing in regards to sustainability?
In terms of roadblocks, okay, so I mean, first of all, we are a heavily franchised, business model. Most of our estate is franchised, so our capacity to achieve our goals is really going to depend on how the hotel owners are on board with it. So our capacity to really demonstrate what good looks like. But also to do business cases to them, also considering the impact of the pandemic on their business, and look at potentially propose financing solution, but also really practical initiative that hotels can implement. So I think the franchise model is definitely one of them. The second, as I'm sure you can guess, it always comes down to money and budget. And as I said, especially on the back of the pandemic and the last 16 months. and also, the global nature of our business. We operate in over 100 countries around the world. So there is different awareness of sustainability. There is different regulation, different understandings. So it's maneuvering all of that, and also looking at, we've got very long 10-year target, but it's also looking at putting more interim target and closer target to be able to achieve those along the way. So there is a number of roadblocks, but also great opportunities to tackle all those challenges.
Yeah, I'd like to jump in on that one if you don't mind. Roadblock we're seeing from a sustainability standpoint is also duty of care. We're still in the middle of a pandemic, and with the variant popping up, duty of care is still very much top of mind, taking care of travelers that are have to get on the road because of service level agreements that they have to fulfill and whatnot. And so right now we're dealing with, what do I focus on first? Is it sustainability? Is it duty of care? When do I put sustainability on the back burner? So it's a very real conversation that we're dealing with right now. Incredible interest in learning about sustainability from our customers, but a lot of the answers are, I want all the information I can get right now to potentially make future decisions in the next few months, hopefully, as things start to settle down with this variant and the pandemic in general.
Yeah. And when we talked a little bit about some of the roadblocks, but Jerry, how would you say that buyers can measure sustainability within their own organization today as it relates to travel?
Yeah, each organization, from a scope 1, scope 2 standpoint, are going to have their own measurements on what they want to do as far as goal setting towards science-based targets or whatever their specific goals are. For us on the aviation side, calculating emissions, there's a multitude of tools out there. I'm speaking specifically to one, which is the DEFRA tool, DEFRA tool, that they can go in there, and it's a free tool to start beginning to calculate what their emissions are. So if they're a smaller company or they want to kind of have a gut check, if you will, they can take their flight data from all of their flights and plug it into the tool and kind of get it at a high level and and start doing some goal setting. The science-based community have also put out some really good tools as well to calculate absolute emissions and what their goals could be in reducing that. And also agency is a great place, especially a lot of agencies have different divisions, such as BCD have their own division where they have tools and teams that can actually help with calculating different things like emissions, specifically in car rental or aviation, to help them with their emission goals.
Exactly, as well as with hotels.
Absolutely.
Elodie, the next question is for you. How are you renovating what exists today to support greener properties?
Yeah, and this is a good and fair question. About 80% of the building that will be in use in 2050 exists today, and that includes hotels. So there is it's vital basically for us to look at how we decarbonize hotels moving forward. So of course, as I mentioned earlier, the size of our footprint and also the fact that we are a very heavily franchised organization does present challenge, but also opportunities for us to look at reducing those emissions at scale. There is actually a very interesting white paper and a real life case study that IHG was actively involved in together with 3 other companies. I don't know if some of the clients on the line may have heard of it, been shared by their key account manager. Otherwise, I'm happy also as a follow-up to send this over. The title of it is Transforming Existing Hotels to Net Zero, and this is a partnership with Arup, Gleeds, and Schneider Electric, and it's really looking at how we can achieve decarbonization of the existing hotels by 2050, but also really how the impact of the intervention in terms of carbon compared to the gains that will be realized. So it's quite a high level framework that has been put into place with some concrete actions for hotel, balancing, as I said earlier, all the existing roadblocks in place, but also sometimes, I guess, having to judge, is it worth decarbonizing a hotel, or does it actually make more sense to build a new property? So as I said, it's an interest for anyone who's really keen. There is 63 pages of the case study, but otherwise there is a 2-page summary for everyone who wants to read the top line. So I will send this as a follow-up after the call.
Yeah, I think we can send that out as a, to all the participants. I think that would be great.
Electronic, not on paper.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. We'll send the link to the report. Okay, so the next question is also for you, Elodie. What is happening to support a common metric for all travel providers to report on sustainability?
Okay,
I
and
think we talked about, yeah.
we have a lot of questions from our corporate clients on this at the moment. I think, Jerry, you mentioned DEFRA. We are using a hotel carbon measurement initiative. So there is a lot of frustration also from clients at the moment, because it is a bit of a minefield. There is so many different partners also that are providing different certification process. It becomes really, really confusing for the customers. So let me just perhaps backtrack a little bit and talk to you about our own metrics. So we've got a program which is called Green Engage. It's actually an online environmental dashboard that hotels can use to measure, to manage, and report their use of carbon, energy, water, and waste. We started this about 10 years ago. And also it gives, there is up to 200 solutions that are given to hotels so that they can improve on those different factors. We are now investing in quite a big digital transformation project together with Schneider Electric as well on that GE 2.0. So we can really provide that above property content as well to the hotels and make some improvement in that field, because I think often the issue is hotels have got a lot of data, but we are not able to have that consolidated view. So hopefully that will solve that problem. We are being asked a lot of sustainability data as well from our clients more and more. And as I said, so we are following the Hotel Carbon Measurement Initiative, so HCMI, in order to provide customers with visibility on their carbon footprint with their stays with IHG. That was actually implemented for the hospitality industry, those measurements. You also have the Hotel Carbon Water Initiative, so HCWI. So this is what we use and what we would recommend. I am aware that all the main organizations, hotel companies, should be using also that framework. So at least that enables customers to compare like for like. But as I said earlier, we are of course partnering with peers and with industry groups and collaborating together to see how we can sort of streamline and work towards, common certification. You may be, some of the clients on the call may be aware as well that Cvent has launched a new sustainability and diversity module, so previous Lanyon. And I know a lot of my clients were not necessarily aware, but I think this will probably be a good way for any customers that is thinking for the next RFP season. I need to have data, to have information on what my suppliers are doing. This would be a good questionnaire to use. I think it's about 47 questions, but at least hotels are also familiar with that framework. They will be able to provide you the content without overloading them as well with so many different questionnaires. And as I said, this is a Cvent questionnaire, so that should give the customers also all the information they need when it comes to sustainability and diversity.
Excellent. Okay, and then Jerry, one final question for you. If someone is just starting their sustainability journey, what advice would you give to them in terms of gathering information?
Education. It's reading. It's honestly it's reading publications on your own and then confirming them with your top vendors and partners like a Delta, like an IHG, like a BCD, and gathering almost like a read and confirm and kind of model there, and because each vendor is going to be in a very specific space and what they're trying to do. What IHG is doing is on one aspect of the travel ribbon. Delta is going to be focusing on the fuel side of the travel ribbon, and whatever you're reading in from a science-based community base or anything issued by SABA or anything along those lines, you want to definitely educate yourself first. And then definitely lean on your trusted vendors and partners, honestly, to then see what they're doing in the space to gather even more intel on that. It's the education piece, I think, is what we spend 80% of our time on right now. Is we're in this education mode on from a sustainability standpoint, because from education comes comfort, because there's a lot of anxiety, honestly, Kathy, in the sustainability space with our customers. And if we can reduce that anxiety and create some confidence from that, because what we're feeling is, where do I even start? And that came up at the very beginning of our call. Where do I even start with this conversation? What do I even do? And it really starts with that education piece. And what a lot of us on the line, all three of us on the line right here, want to be trusted consultants, honestly, for our customers. So do your own independent education and verify with your vendors that you really want to work with and chat with sustainable practices about.
Yeah, it's all about building a more sustainable future together. So I know we're at the end of our time, so I would like to thank both Jerry and also Elodie for their participation as today's panelists, and also for sharing how Delta and IHG are addressing this very important topic. So again, I would like to thank all the attendees and participation in today's session, and I'm going to turn it back to Allie to close out. So thank you, and I hope everyone has a good rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you.